And welcome back. Well, before America was even a country, half the city of Boston was ill from smallpox, and 1 out of every 10 people died from the disease.
Unbelievable. But that epidemic sparked a series of events that would change history. Our next guest wrote this book. It is The Fever of 1721, the epidemic that revolutionized medicine and American politics. Stephen Coss said he was inspired to research the topic because of one of those fact-a-day calendars. What was that?
It's Coss.
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 Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
No, that's
I said
okay.
your
It
name
has
wrong.
happened before, believe it or not.
Really
Yeah.
nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet
so
you.
much for being here.
Thank you.
Fascinating book. And I think the beginnings of it, the origins of it for you as a writer are quite fascinating too, because in 1994 you got a fact-a-day desk calendar as a Christmas stocking stuffer, and one of the facts there concerned a doctor who had this daring inoculation experiment during 1721 and the Boston smallpox epidemic.
That's
so
right.
you were curious enough about that fact that you thought, hey, I got to know more?
Believe it or not, I went on an 8-year expedition to find out about that story. And actually what happened was I got the calendar and I wrote a screenplay based on the calendar because I thought that's what I wanted to do. And I put it in a drawer, like many screenwriters. 10 years elapsed. A friend of mine who's a published author and I were having a drink one night, and I told him about the story, and he said, you really need to write that as a book. And that was 8 years ago. So I resurrected the idea, and I spent 8 years researching and writing.
So what is it about this story that really sparked your interest? What was it that you're like, you know what, this really is something that people are going to want to read about?
Well, although it's history, obviously, 1721 was a long time ago, some of the issues in the book are the ones we deal with today. We have epidemics like Ebola. We have the Zika virus. We have who knows what else. And I was curious about how we could learn from an earlier time how the culture and how science and how politics dealt with this kind of challenge. And that's really what got me into it.
Fascinating, too, the things that sort of happened as a result of it. First of all, to think about 1 out of 10 people. You think if you have a family of 5 and then your next door neighbor has a family of 5, that one of you is going to die on average as a result of this horrible illness is unbelievable. But then the effect that it had on free press here in our country, and this revolutionary movement too. So it had really far-reaching impact.
Yeah, I think what often happens is in a time of crisis, a lot of things start changing. Not only the things directly related to the crisis, but other things. And in this case, because of this epidemic, and because of the inoculation controversy, we got the first independent newspaper in America.
So that was the first time that free press and the journalistic things were really affected in terms because of the inoculation.
Right. Before that, the papers that existed printed whatever the government told them to. And a man named James Franklin, the older brother of Benjamin Franklin, whom we all know, was the man who said, I'm going to try something different. And he used the opportunity of this big controversy that came up over inoculation against smallpox to start a newspaper.
What I find fascinating, too, about this doctor is that the first inoculation done on his own son.
Right.
What a risky thing that is.
Yeah, exactly. He was six years old at the time, Thomas Boylston. And Thomas, I think his father thought, if I can't do it on my own children, how can I ask anyone else to give me their children and to use this seemingly crazy procedure? And so he did inoculate his first son as one of his first patients.
It's almost biblical, I feel like, as a story in the retelling. Also, people see it, and you would argue that this Boston 1721 was actually the first drama of the American Revolution.
In a lot of ways it was, because at the same time the epidemic was breaking out and the controversy over inoculation was happening, there was also a political fever that the title references, which was a bunch of elected American officials basically in political revolt against the royal governor who was appointed.
Yeah, they ousted him.
They did. They did. And not by force, not at gunpoint, but basically they gathered so much political power by forming what would become known as the Boston Caucus that they were able to neutralize his effect, and he left. He realized there was nothing he could do, and he simply left.
Yeah. So really a matter of how this changes politics and how politicians and our elected officials have to address these medical emergencies, these problems. And as you said, I mean, we really do see it in today's society. This really is something that is kind of repeated time and time again.
Yeah, the particulars change, technology changes. We know a lot more than we did in 1721, but especially when it comes to the culture and the politics reaction to the crisis, a lot is the same.
And to think that some of the writing about it is sort of a precursor to things like The Onion that we know about satirical outlets, The Daily Show even. People can find out more about you and this book, The Fever of 1721, by going to your website. It's StephenCoss.com, and Coss is COSS.com. Great to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.